Real Tinder stories can be more terrifying than you think. In story 1, a woman falls for a charming Frenchman and ends up trapped in a web of lies and manipulation. In story 2, a younger man wins over a successful woman. But behind the romance, he hides a dark agenda.
I never really believed in happy endings, not because I was cynical, but because life had trained me to expect sharp edges where there should have been soft landings. I had learned, often painfully, that trust is currency, and too often counterfeit. And love? Love was just another contract waiting to be breached. That autumn in Charlotte was particularly quiet. The trees along Queens Road were shedding like they were mourning. My apartment in Myers Park, a sleek top-floor unit overlooking the city skyline, felt like a luxury tomb, expensive, isolated, immaculate. I worked late every night, not because I had to, but because I didn't want to come home to silence. That's when I did it. I downloaded Tinder. Told myself it was just for curiosity, maybe even amusement, but something about Eric's profile stopped me cold. Marketing executive, art lover, traveler. His photos were clean, stylish, a little rugged. His smile was confident but not arrogant. In a sea of gym selfies and half-baked bios, he stood out like a lighthouse. We matched, and from that moment, everything changed. He messaged first, polite, thoughtful, witty in a quiet, self-assured way. We talked about Rothko, obscure indie films, and Vietnamese street food. By the third day, he called me. His voice was deep, calm, comforting. He made me feel like I wasn't just being heard, but understood. By the end of the first week, we met for dinner. He chose a little-known Mediterranean place tucked between office buildings. Dim lights, warm wine, and conversation that flowed like we had met in another life. He paid, of course, walked me to my car. Said he'd had a wonderful evening and didn't kiss me, just touched my hand lightly. Respectfully. I was hooked. Over the next few weeks, we became inseparable. My routines shifted. My apartment changed. Suddenly, his toothbrush was next to mine. Jacket draped over my chair. He started working remotely from my home office, saying his place was under renovations. It made sense. Everything he did, but there were little things. Tiny threads he never took. Calls in front of me. Said his mother was sick, but never said her name. He dodged photos. And once, when I asked about his middle name, he paused too long. Then came the loan. He seemed embarrassed, apologetic. Something about a payment delay from an overseas client. He needed $5,000, just for a few days. I transferred it without hesitation. He didn't even say thank you. Just kissed my forehead and made me breakfast. Then it became normal, a pattern. Money moving, stories shifting. I didn't even realize he had my safe code until I found it unlocked one morning. My grandmother's diamond brooch gone. I confronted him. He was calm. You must have misplaced it, he said gently, as if I were the unstable one. I believed him. Until the Tesla disappeared. I woke up on a Wednesday. The garage was empty. My keys were on the kitchen counter. I called him, straight to voicemail. And then, at 11:16 a.m., I received a text from an unknown number. You'll cooperate, or would you prefer everyone at the DA's office to see these pictures? I opened the file. Photos, dozens, of me. In bed, in the shower, on calls. Intimate, explicit. Images I never gave him permission to take. And below, a list of demands. Transfer the apartment deed. Grant access to our joint bank account. Deliver all jewelry, especially heirlooms. My knees buckled. I called him. He answered after a few rings. Vanessa, you knew this wasn't real. I never lied. You just didn't ask the right questions. His voice was hollow, distant. No regret. I couldn't breathe. I went to the police. But everything, every account, the apartment, the car was technically in both our names now. I had signed, trusted, shared. It all looked legal. I started locking every door, sleeping with the lights on. I placed tape over my laptop camera. My phone lived. outside my bedroom. I stopped going out. My house, once my sanctuary, became a prison. Then came the pictures of my niece walking to school, my father entering church, my license plate, my front door. I was being watched, until one day I found a note under my doormat. "You're not alone. I fell too. Call me, Jay." Her name was Julia. She had met him 6 months before me, lost $60,000. She had seen the same smile, the same lies, the same threats. When she showed me his picture, my blood ran cold. Different name, slightly different haircut, same eyes. Together we found more. 2 other women, one in Austin, another in Seattle. Same scam, same charm, same destruction. We gathered everything. Screenshots, transfers, ID photos. And then, a miracle. My building's outdated security system had automatically backed up garage footage, clear as day. Him, driving away in my Tesla. We ran facial recognition through legal networks, got a hit. His real name, Derek Hallman. 2 fraud convictions, one in Oregon, one in New Jersey. With that, I filed a motion for emergency asset freeze, called in every contact I had. A restraining order was issued. My bank halted withdrawals. The co-op board blocked the transfer of the apartment. It was a small victory, but he was already gone. I received one final message. "You're good, better than the others, but I'm always one step ahead." Then silence. 1 week later, Border Control contacted me. A man with forged Canadian documents tried to cross near Buffalo. When agents approached, he ran into the forest, leaving behind a duffel bag. Inside, my jewelry, my papers, my credit cards, everything recovered. The Tesla was found abandoned in a storage facility. I got it back. The apartment title was never finalized. I kept it. But peace, that never really returned. I still jump when my phone rings from an unknown number. I check every lock twice. Some nights the intercom buzzes and no one answers. No one is there. And still, I wonder. He's out there, waiting. And someone, somewhere, is swiping right. The next morning, I left early, took my laptop, the file, my fear. I drove to the immigration office, then the police. When I returned, he was gone. No suitcase, no cologne, no flowers, only a note. "Thank you for everything. You are special, but I have to leave." He knew. They traced him to a bus station, then to upstate New York. They said he tried to cross the border near Quebec with fake documents. He escaped. No one has seen him since. But sometimes, in Capitol Hill, I hear someone whistling an old Edith Piaf song just outside my window, and my blood runs cold. They had applied for a K-1 visa. He just needed proof of established ties in case the process failed. He had done this before, in Chicago, in Tampa, in Portland. Every time, the same pattern. Charm, seduce, manipulate, vanish. He changed accents, jobs, even names. In one case, he claimed to be an artist. In another, a writer. My hands shook as I read the file. That night, I acted as if nothing had changed. He made wine-braised duck. I smiled. I laughed. We watched an old French film. Then he kissed me and said, "I think I'm falling in love with you." I whispered back, "Me too." I froze. He denied everything, called it harassment, told me she was trying to sabotage his immigration process. "She's jealous," he said. "She found out I'm staying in the U.S. and she can't take it." But doubt was planted. I hired a private investigator. The truth was worse than I imagined. Julian wasn't just looking for love. He was targeting American women for green card marriages. Amelie wasn't his ex. She was his current fiancée. But things began shifting. He started taking late-night calls on the balcony, always whispering. He'd vanish for hours with no explanation. One night, I noticed his suitcase in the closet had been packed and unpacked 3 times in 1 week. Then came the phone call. A woman. French. Calm. Chilling. "You don't know what you're involved in," she said. "He's using you. Just like the others." Until I found another message. Weeks later, he forgot to log out of his Facebook account on my laptop. My curiosity burned. His inbox was filled with messages between him and Amelie. Pictures, plans, engagement rings. One caption chilled me. "Preparing a life together in the United States." I confronted him again. He didn't deny it. "Yes," he admitted. "She was my fiancée. But when I met you, everything changed. I was confused. I still am." He wept. Again. Said he'd end things. That I was the one. That she was a mistake. I wanted to believe him. So I did. When he came out, I handed him the phone. His eyes darkened. "It's not what you think," he whispered. "She's from my past. She's not well. I was trying to be kind." He looked ashamed. Explained how Amelie was an ex-fiancée who'd become unstable after their breakup. He hadn't blocked her because he didn't want to push her further into darkness. He held me, whispered apologies, cooked my favorite dish that night. I let it go. But even fairy tales have shadows. The first came on a Sunday morning. He was in the shower. His phone lit up with a message from Amelie. It was in French, but I studied the language in college. I recognized the words. "You miss me? I can't wait to see you again. I love you." I felt a strange numbness creep up my spine. I took a screenshot and waited. By the end of that month, we were inseparable. He spent nights at my apartment, cooked me delicate French dishes I couldn't pronounce, and read Rimbaud aloud in his accent that turned the words into spells. He called me my beautiful Laura, whispered that I was irresistible and that age was a blessing in women. I laughed like a teenager. For the first time in years, I felt adored. He said he'd left France behind, said it held too many ghosts. He was rebuilding, like me. That made us kindred spirits. We texted for hours, then days, then nightly calls. Within a week, he asked to take me to dinner. He chose a candlelit spot with live jazz and fresh-made gnocchi. When he arrived, I barely recognized him. He looked better in person, taller, leaner, more intense. He brought flowers and smelled like saffron and lavender. We talked for hours. He kissed my hand at the end of the night and left me breathless. I smiled. His English was excellent but carried that soft French cadence. It was charming, musical, disarming. He told me he had just moved to Colorado to open a bistro in Capitol Hill. Said he loved older women because they were confident and magnetic. I should have questioned the smoothness of it all, but I didn't. And there he was, Julian, 34, French, a chef. His bio was brief but elegant. Here for a taste of life and love. His photos were modest, no gym selfies, no shirtless bravado. Just cafes, fresh bread, wine bottles, and one candid picture of him laughing in what looked like a Parisian alley. We matched instantly. His first message was simple. "Good evening, Laura. Your eyes are truly captivating." I never thought I'd be back on dating apps at 48. After my divorce, I spent years pouring myself into my event planning business, building a reputation, a company, and a life that felt stable. Love had become an afterthought, something that happened to other people, not to women like me. Not anymore. But that night, something felt different. The Denver skyline glowed beneath my window, and the wine in my hand felt too quiet. I opened Tinder more out of curiosity than hope.
So, you made it this far. Impressive. My goal is to bring you videos that will make you think. What if this is actually true? Consider subscribing to get direct access to new videos and turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next video. If you have the courage to watch until the end.